But this is a third series. They came out in about 8 different series. But this is a torpedo Lambda, as they call it, with a long front end. And these cars, the enthusiastic club over the paddock, they keep driving these cars. This very car has been to Italy 6 times. It's constantly driven in the 80s and 90s, a holiday car in the UK. It's been owned by Mike Benwell for 40 years. It was bought new in the UK back in London for £675 in 1933. So, yes, they were cheaper then. And following Mike Benwell up is our next Lambda. Now the whole thing about the Lambda, it was a sort of breakthrough car. Because they had sort of 4 pioneering innovations. They got monocoque bodyworks, because up until now almost all cars were built with what we call a ladder chassis, so the engine and the chassis were, with the wheels were one part, then you build whatever, coach builders would build whatever shape of body you wanted on the top. But the Lambda was the first to use what's called this monocoque construction. It also had brakes on all 4 wheels, which was unusual, but most importantly, perhaps independent front suspension, and you'll see that much more in the racing version that comes out last. The big vertical tube was the very first independent front engine. Also V8 and V4 engines, so they're very advanced. They moved the world of motoring forward quite a lot. The second one out, the bright red one, that's an 8th series Lambada Torpedo, long wheelbase. Now this car, I love these stories. This car was actually sold to India in 1929, then was moved to Hong Kong for a new owner to drive in 67, before it's eventually returned its way back to England. So these cars that have travelled the world are just a fascinating part of their history. The blue Torpedo out in 1924, a later Lambada. This car was in Australia until 2009 before being brought back to England. I began the first show about 5 weeks ago, or sorry, was it Friday or 5 weeks ago, calling them Lampardas, and I've now lost the plot completely. I've got Lambada music, I think that'd be good. It wasn't a Lambada music. So that was that one. I've lost the truck, we've now got a 27. The blue ML2972. This was a lovely story car. This was actually the owner first sat in it as a passenger in 1951 when she was going out, but her boyfriend had that very car. Unfortunately, he sold it and they partied, and about 25 years later she saw it for sale and she bought back the very car that she'd sat in as a passenger in 1951. And she's had it in her family ever since. It's been completely restored. Her daughter now drives it as well. They do VSEC rallies. They call it Murphy because when it did a rally in Ireland, it kept on breaking down, which they thought was Murphy's Law. But so yes, a car first sat in as a passenger in 1951 and now still in the family owned. And finally, the last of our cars on all our thing is a Die Lambda. Now, not only is it a racing car, but Die Lambda, the standard Lambdas. If you look at that front suspension, this is the one where you can see those vertical tubes where the suspension goes vertically up and down. It was called a Die Lambda because it's got 2 Lambda engines in the front. So they've moved it from a V4 into a V8 by sticking 2 engines together. It was raced against the Alfa Romeos in pre-war down in Italy. It's got a heritage certificate. We actually believe this is the only one of these in the whole world, the only Die Lambda. It's recently been it's actually only been running, I think, for about 11 days. I think they've just prepared to start the big show. But it's only made 2 shows, so you're the only second show that's seen this car on the move. It's a very rare sight. 33. My head is spinning, I'm going round and round. I'm back to the music, it's the only way to go.